What would you do if you found a hotel receipt in your husband's pocket at 6 in the morning? A receipt for champagne, chocolate-covered strawberries, room service for two, while you were home, 8 months pregnant, carrying his child. Grace Mitchell thought she knew her husband. She thought she knew her marriage. She thought she knew her life. She was wrong about everything. But here's what Bradley didn't know.
This
His wife
email
wasn't the
proves they
naive,
knew
trusting
about the
woman he believed her to
shipment.
be. She had
The
suspected
date
for
matches
months.
the manifest.
She had been watching, waiting,
I've got it.
gathering evidence. And when she finally had enough of proof, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't confront him. She made a plan that would leave Bradley coming home to an empty house, divorce papers on his pillow, and a wife who had vanished into thin air. This is a story about betrayal, about survival, about a woman who refused to be a victim. Stay with me until the end. I promise you won't regret it. The receipt was still warm from his wallet when Grace found it. She stood in their bedroom at 6:15 in the morning. The bathroom door was closed. Steam crept through the gap at the bottom. Bradley was in the shower singing some old song she used to love. Grace had only meant to pick up his pants from the floor. He never left clothes on the floor. Bradley Mitchell was meticulous about everything. His suits hung in color-coordinated rows, his shoes lined up like soldiers, his ties organized by season. But last night he had dropped his pants in a heap by the bed, like he was in a hurry, like he had something on his mind. The receipt fell out when she lifted the fabric. The Grandview Hotel, room 417, room service for two, one bottle of champagne, chocolate-covered strawberries. The charge time read 11:47 in the evening. Grace stared at the thin slip of paper. Her fingers did not shake. Not yet. Bradley had texted her at 9 o'clock last night. Working late again, babe, don't wait up. Kiss the belly for me. She had believed him. She always believed him. The baby kicked inside her. 8 months pregnant, and this child never stopped moving. Grace placed her free hand on her swollen stomach. The kicks came harder now, almost urgent. She could hear Bradley still singing, the water still running, the steam still rising. Grace did something that surprised her. She pulled out her phone and photographed the receipt, front and back. Then she folded it carefully and slipped it back into his pocket, exactly where she found it. Her heart should have been racing. Her hands should have been trembling. But something cold had settled over her instead. Something quiet and watchful. She walked to his nightstand. His phone sat face down on the charger. She picked it up and typed in the passcode. Their wedding anniversary. He never changed it. The home screen opened. She tapped the messages icon. The name at the top made her stomach clench. Danny P., a woman's name, a name she did not recognize. Grace opened the thread. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. She suspects nothing. The words blurred for a moment. Grace blinked hard. She would not cry. Not now, not yet. She scrolled up. The messages went back weeks, months. Little hearts and inside jokes and plans to meet. Photos she could not bring herself to open. The bathroom door handle turned. Grace placed the phone exactly where she found it, face down, charging. She straightened her robe and walked toward the door. Bradley emerged in a cloud of steam, a white towel wrapped around his waist, water droplets on his shoulders. That smile she used to trust spread across his face. "Morning, beautiful," he said. He crossed the room and kissed her forehead. His lips were warm. His cologne was fresh, the same cologne she had bought him for Christmas. "How's my little guy doing?" he asked, placing his hand on her belly. The baby kicked against his palm. "Active," Grace said. Her voice sounded normal. She did not know how. Bradley grinned. "That's my boy, already training for soccer." They did not know the gender yet. Bradley had decided it was a boy. He talked about teaching his son to throw a football, taking him to baseball games, all the things his father had done with him. Grace watched her husband dress for work, the careful selection of his tie, the precise adjustment of his cuffs, every movement so familiar, every gesture now suspect. "Big day?" she asked. "Client meetings," Bradley replied. "Might run late again. You know how it is." She knew exactly how it was. He kissed her goodbye at the front door, a quick peck on the lips. His hand brushed her belly one more time. "Love you," he said. Love you too. The words tasted like rust in her mouth. Grace stood at the window and watched his car back down the driveway, the black Mercedes that she had helped him pick out, the same car that had probably driven to the Grandview Hotel last night. She watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner. Then she walked upstairs to his home office. Bradley kept his laptop on the antique desk she had restored for his birthday. She had spent 3 months stripping the old wood, finding the perfect stain, replacing the brass handles. She opened the laptop. The password was the same as his phone. His email loaded. She typed a name into the search bar. Danny P. 47 results. Grace began to read. The first email was from 4 months ago, a casual message about a work project. Nothing suspicious, but the tone shifted quickly. By the second week, they were meeting for coffee. By the third, drinks after work. The fourth month told a different story: hotel confirmations, dinner reservations, a jewelry receipt for a necklace that Grace had never seen. She checked the calendar he shared with her. Every Thursday marked as client dinner. Every Thursday for the past 3 months. Grace opened his photo library. The images loaded slowly. Her breath caught. Bradley and a young woman, blonde hair, sharp smile. They sat at a restaurant Grace recognized, a place she had suggested for their anniversary last year. Bradley had said it was too expensive. More photos, a beach somewhere, a rooftop bar, his arm around her shoulders, her head against his chest. The timestamps matched his late nights, his business trips, his client dinners. Grace closed the laptop. She sat very still in his leather chair. The morning sun streamed through the window. Dust particles floated in the light. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked, ticked, ticked. The baby shifted inside her. A roll rather than a kick this time, like the child was settling in, getting comfortable. Grace placed both hands on her stomach. "I know," she whispered. "I know, baby. Mama knows. She should call someone. Her mother, her best friend, a lawyer, anyone. But first she needed to understand how deep this went." She opened the laptop again. An hour passed, then 2. The sun moved across the floor. The house stayed silent. Grace found credit card statements Bradley had hidden in a folder labeled Tax Documents 2019. The charges told their own story. Hotels she had never visited, restaurants she had never seen. A spa day that was not for her. But it was the email to his mother that broke something inside her. The message was dated 6 weeks ago, a conversation thread between Bradley and Peggy Mitchell. "When are you telling her?" Peggy had written. "After the baby comes," Bradley replied. "I need to make sure I have custody leverage first. The courts favor mothers, but if I can establish that she's unstable or unfit, I have a chance." "Smart thinking," Peggy wrote back. "That girl was never good enough for this family anyway. I told you from the beginning." Grace read the words 3 times. Her mother-in-law knew. The woman who smiled at her across the dinner table. The woman who rubbed her belly and talked about being a grandmother. She knew about the affair. She was helping plan the divorce. They were calculating custody of a baby who was not even born yet. Grace closed the laptop for the final time. She stood and walked to the window. The neighborhood stretched out below her. Manicured lawns and expensive cars and houses full of secrets. She had built a life here, decorated every room in this house, planted the garden in the backyard, hung the photos on the walls. All of it was a lie. Grace picked up her phone. Her hands were steady now, completely steady. She dialed a number she knew by heart. Vivian answered on the second ring. "Grace, everything okay? I need you to come over, right now." A pause. "What happened?" Grace looked around her husband's office, the desk she restored, the chair she picked out, the life she thought she was building. "I'll explain when you get here," she said. "But Viv, come alone and bring your work bag." Vivian Hayes was not just her best friend from college. She was also one of the best divorce attorneys in the state. "I'm on my way," Vivian said. Grace ended the call. She walked to the nursery she had spent months preparing, the soft gray walls, the white crib she assembled herself because Bradley was always too busy, the mobile of silver stars that caught the morning light. She had imagined bringing her baby home to this room, rocking in the glider by the window, watching her child sleep in the crib she chose with such hope. Now she saw it differently. She saw all those nights alone, painting these walls while Bradley worked late. All those weekends building furniture while he played golf. All those moments she explained away and forgave and forgot. He had never been too busy for work. He had been too busy for her. Grace sank into the glider. The cushions were soft beneath her. The nursery smelled like fresh paint and the lavender sachets she had placed in the drawers. The baby kicked again, strong and steady. "We're going to be okay," Grace whispered. "I don't know how yet, but we're going to be okay." She rocked slowly in the chair. Back and forth, back and forth. The grandfather clock chimed downstairs. 9 in the morning. Vivian would be here soon. And then Grace thought the real work would begin. Vivian arrived in 23 minutes. Grace heard the car pull into the driveway, the engine cutting off, the click of heels on the front walk. She opened the door before Vivian could knock. Her best friend stood on the porch in a navy suit, her dark hair pulled back, her leather bag clutched against her side. The face Grace had known since freshman orientation at Boston College was tight with concern. "You look calm," Vivian said. "That scares me." "Come inside." Grace led her to the kitchen. Sunlight poured through the windows she had picked out during the renovation. The marble countertops gleamed. The coffee maker hummed. She had printed everything, the emails, the receipts, the text screenshots, the credit card statements. The conversation with Peggy, the stack sat on the kitchen island between them. Vivian picked up the first page. Her eyes moved quickly, lawyer eyes scanning for facts. "How long have you known?" she asked without looking up. "About an hour, maybe 2. "How did you find out?" "A receipt fell out of his pocket. Then I checked his phone, then his laptop." Vivian set down the first page and picked up the second. Her jaw tightened. "These photos go back 3 months, she said. "I know." "The jewelry receipt is from 4 months ago." "I know." Vivian looked up. Her eyes were hard now, not with anger at Grace, with something sharper. "He's been planning this," she said. "The timeline shows intent. The email to his mother shows premeditation." Grace nodded. The words confirmed what she already knew. "What are my options?" she asked. Vivian set down the papers. She pulled out a chair and sat. Grace sat across from her. "In this state, infidelity affects the divorce settlement emotion," Vivian said. "Not as much as it used to, but it matters, especially when there's documentation, especially when there's a pattern. What about custody?" "That email to his mother is gold. He's literally discussing how to manipulate custody proceedings before the baby is born. Any judge would take a dim view of that." Grace felt something loosen in her chest, just slightly. "So I have leverage," she said. "You have significant leverage. But here's what matters now." Vivian leaned forward. "You have 2 choices. Confront him today and lose the element of surprise, or prepare carefully and leave on your terms." Grace thought about Bradley singing in the shower, his kiss on her forehead, his hand on her belly. "Love you, babe." "I want him to feel what I'm feeling right now," Grace said. Blindsided, helpless, like the ground just disappeared beneath his feet. Vivian nodded slowly. "Then we need time. 2 weeks, maybe 3. "For what?" "Documentation, asset protection, finding you a place to go, making sure every legal piece is in position before he knows anything is wrong." Grace looked around her kitchen. The kitchen she designed, the house she made into a home. "I can do that," she said. Vivian reached across the island and took her hand. "Grace, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay. Did you have any idea before today?" Grace was quiet for a long moment. The refrigerator hummed. A bird sang outside the window. The baby shifted inside her. "Yes," she finally said. "I think I did." Vivian waited. "About 2 months ago, I noticed perfume on his collar, not mine. I told myself it was nothing. Someone hugged him at work. A client meeting." Grace pulled her hand back. She wrapped her arms around herself. Then the late nights started getting later. His phone was always face down. He flinched when I touched him unexpectedly. Little things. Things I could explain away. "But you couldn't," Vivian said softly. "No, I couldn't." Grace met her friend's eyes. "I started paying attention, watching, noting when his stories didn't quite match. I just never had proof." Until today. Until today. Vivian sat back, a new expression crossed her face. Respect, Grace realized. Maybe even admiration. You've been preparing, Vivian said. Even if you didn't know you were preparing. I guess I have. Then let's make it official. Vivian opened her bag and pulled out a legal pad. Tell me everything. Every asset you know about. Every account. Every property. Every investment. They talked for 3 hours. Grace knew more than she realized. Years of marriage had given her access to information Bradley probably forgot she had. Account numbers glimpsed on statements, property documents filed in the home office, investment portfolios discussed at dinner parties. She told Vivian all of it. When they finished, Vivian had filled 12 pages with notes. This is good, she said, really good. He thinks you're oblivious. That's your greatest advantage. What do I do now? Go back to normal, act like nothing has changed. Let him think you're the same trusting wife he left this morning. Grace felt her stomach turn. The thought of pretending, of smiling at him across the dinner table, of lying next to him at night. I don't know if I can do that, she said. Vivian reached over and gripped her arm. You can, because the alternative is worse. If you confront him now, he'll lawyer up immediately. He'll hide assets. He'll start building a case against you. That email to his mother tells you exactly what he's capable of. Grace thought about the words again. Custody leverage. Establish that she's unstable. He would really do that, she asked. Try to take my baby? He's already planning to do it. You just got to the information first. The baby kicked hard, right against Grace's ribs. Okay, Grace said, I can pretend. For 2 weeks. Good. Vivian stood and gathered the papers. I'm going to start the process on my end, quietly. Nothing filed yet, nothing official, just preparation. What about the affair? Do I need more evidence? What you have is solid, but more never hurts. Vivian paused at the kitchen door. If you can get into his phone again, screenshot everything, especially anything where he admits to the affair directly, or discusses hiding assets, or mentions custody strategy. Grace nodded. One more thing, Vivian said. Start thinking about where you want to go. When you leave, you need a place he can't find. Cash transactions only. Nothing traceable. I'll figure it out. Vivian crossed the kitchen and hugged her, carefully, around the belly. You're going to get through this, she whispered. You're stronger than you know. Grace held on for a moment, then she let go. After Vivian left, Grace stood alone in her kitchen. The afternoon sun had shifted. Shadows stretched across the floor. The house was silent except for the clock. She thought about the woman she had been this morning. The one who picked up her husband's pants without suspicion. The one who believed his texts about working late. That woman was gone now. Grace walked upstairs to the nursery. She stood in the doorway and looked at the room she had created with such hope. The crib she assembled alone. The walls she painted while Bradley was at his client dinners. The mobile she hung while he was in hotel rooms with another woman. She had been alone in this marriage for longer than she realized. The only difference now was that she knew it. Grace placed her hands on her belly. The baby was quiet, resting maybe, gathering strength. We're not alone, she said softly. We have each other, and that's enough. She turned off the light and closed the door. Tonight, Bradley would come home. He would kiss her and ask about her day and tell her about his meetings, and she would smile and nod and pretend. But underneath the performance, she would be counting down the days. 12 days until the company gala. 12 days until Bradley spent an entire evening with his mistress, thinking his wife was home alone. 12 days until Grace Mitchell disappeared. The next 12 days passed like a fever dream. Grace woke each morning beside her husband. She felt his warmth next to her, smelled his familiar scent on the pillow, watched him dress for work in the closet they shared. Every moment was a performance. Good morning, beautiful, Bradley said on day 3. He was adjusting his tie in the mirror, the blue one she bought for his birthday. Good morning, Grace replied from the bed. Her voice sounded normal, cheerful even. Sleep okay? The baby was active, but I managed. He crossed the room and kissed her forehead, the same spot he always kissed, the gesture she used to find so tender. Try to rest today, he said. You're doing amazing, you know that? Growing a whole human being. Grace smiled up at him. I'll try. He left for work. She listened to his car pull away. Then she got up and continued her secret preparations. Each day brought new tasks, new boxes carefully packed when Bradley was gone, new arrangements made in quiet phone calls. Her mother Eleanor arrived on day 4. The nursery needs organizing, Grace had told Bradley. Mom's coming to help. He barely looked up from his laptop. Great, tell her I said hi. Eleanor knew everything. Grace had told her the first night, sitting in the parked car outside her mother's apartment building. Unable to go inside, unable to stop shaking. Her mother had held her for 20 minutes. No words, just presence. Now Eleanor moved through the house like a ghost, cataloging what mattered, deciding what to take. The photo albums, she said on day 5. They stood in the living room while Bradley worked late. Again. All of them, Grace asked. Every photo of you, every memory that belongs to you. Leave the wedding pictures if you want. But everything from before? Everything from your childhood? That comes with us. Grace nodded. Her throat was too tight to speak. They packed in the evenings, after dinner, after Bradley retreated to his office for conference calls that Grace now knew were something else entirely. Day 6 brought a different kind of pain. Grace was folding baby clothes in the nursery, tiny onesies in soft colors, little socks no bigger than her thumb. She picked up a pale green sleeper. The fabric was impossibly soft. A memory surfaced without warning. 3 months ago, the 20-week ultrasound. Bradley had held her hand in the dark room. The technician moved the wand across her belly. The baby appeared on screen. A tiny human. Their tiny human. Look at that, Bradley had whispered. His voice cracked. Grace, look at our baby. She remembered the tears in his eyes, the way he squeezed her fingers, the pure joy on his face. Had he already been seeing her then? Was he already sleeping with Danny when he cried at the ultrasound? Grace set down the sleeper. Her hands were shaking. She thought about the name discussion. 2 months ago, sitting on the back porch, watching the sunset. If it's a boy, I like James, Bradley had said, after my grandfather. And if it's a girl? Josephine, Josie for short. I've always loved that name. Grace had leaned her head on his shoulder. Josie Mitchell. I like it. He had kissed her hair. I love you, Grace. I love our family. Was that a lie too? Every tender moment, every soft word, every plan for the future. The nursery blurred around her. Grace gripped the edge of the changing table. God, I was so stupid. The signs were all there. The late nights that started right after she announced the pregnancy. The distance that grew as her belly did. The way he looked at his phone instead of at her. She thought he was stressed about becoming a father. She thought he was working hard to provide for their growing family. She never thought he was falling in love with someone else. The baby kicked, hard, like a reminder. Grace wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I know, she whispered. I'm okay. We're okay. She finished folding the clothes, packed them in a bunch that would go to the new apartment. Her baby would wear these same soft things, just in a different place. Day 8 was the hardest. Eleanor had gone to the store. Bradley was at work. Grace was alone in the house that no longer felt like home. She found herself in the dining room, standing at the head of the table. This was where they had Thanksgiving last year. Bradley's whole family crowded around. Peggy at the other end holding court. Grace had made the turkey, her first attempt. She was so nervous she woke at 5 in the morning to start cooking. Bradley had stood up before dessert. He raised his glass and smiled at her. To my wife, he had said, the woman who makes this house a home, the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with. Everyone drank. Peggy smiled that thin smile. Charlie caught Grace's eye and winked. The rest of my life, what a joke. Grace walked through the house like a visitor. Every room held a memory now poisoned. The living room where Bradley proposed. Down on one knee, tears in his eyes. I can't imagine my life without you. The kitchen where they danced at 2 in the morning after their honeymoon. No music, just holding each other. The bedroom where he first felt the baby kick. His face lit up like a child's, all of it tainted now. Every moment revealed as something less than what she believed. Grace stopped at the window seat in the hallway. her favorite spot in the house, the place she curled up to read on Sunday mornings. She sat down and looked out at the yard, the garden she planted, the tree they talked about hanging a swing from. The grief hit her then, not for Bradley, not for the marriage, for the woman she used to be, the woman who believed in happy endings, who trusted without question, who thought love was enough. That woman was dying, piece by piece, memory by memory. Grace sat in the window seat for a longer time. The afternoon light shifted, the shadows grew. Her mother found her there when she returned from the store. "Grace!" Eleanor's voice was gentle. "I'm mourning," Grace said. "Not him. Me. The me who believed all of this was real." Eleanor sat beside her. The window seat was small, but they fit. "That woman isn't dying," her mother said. "She's evolving. There's a difference, or so." Grace leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, the way she had as a child. "How do you know?" "Because I've been where you are. When your father left, I thought I would never be whole again. I thought the best parts of me had been lies." Grace looked up. Her mother rarely talked about the divorce. "What changed?" "Time, distance, and realizing that my love was real even if his wasn't. My hope was genuine even if his promises were empty." Eleanor squeezed her daughter's hand. "You weren't stupid for believing him. You were brave. You loved openly. That's nothing to be ashamed of." They sat together until the sun went down. That night, Bradley came home late again. He smelled like wine and something floral. "Client dinner ran long," he said, loosening his tie. "That's okay." Grace's voice was steady. "I saved you a plate." He kissed her cheek. "You're the best, babe. Seriously." She watched him eat leftover pasta at the kitchen counter. The man she married, the stranger wearing his face. 4 more days. 4 more days of this performance. Then she would be free. Day 9. Grace woke before dawn. The house was dark and silent. She lay in bed and listened to Bradley breathe. In and out, the rhythm of someone with nothing on his conscience. How did he do it? How did he lie so easily? She remembered the early years, how attentive he was, how he remembered at every detail. Her favorite flowers, the way she took her coffee, the exact shade of lipstick she wore on their first date. That Bradley felt like a different person now, a character he played to win her. The baby shifted, a slow roll from one side to the other. Grace placed her hand on her belly. "Good morning, little one." She had started talking to the baby more these past days, telling stories, making plans, creating a bond that had nothing to do with Bradley. This child would know what real love looked like. Grace slipped out of bed and went downstairs. The kitchen was cool and quiet. She made tea and sat at the island where she and Vivian had mapped out her escape. 3 more days. The gala was on Saturday. Bradley had already told her not to wait up. "These things run late. Don't want you exhausted in your condition." So considerate, so thoughtful, so completely full of lies. Grace reviewed her checklist in her head. The apartment was ready, keys in her purse, first and last month paid in cash through a friend of Eleanor's, no paper trail. The moving truck was scheduled for Saturday at 7 in the evening. Bradley would be gone by 6. Everything in place, everything ready. Now she just had to survive 3 more days of pretending. Bradley came downstairs at 7, dressed for work, smiling that familiar smile. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." The baby was restless. "Poor thing," he'd poured himself coffee. "Both of you, my girls need rest." "My girls." He said it so casually, like they belonged to him. Grace sipped her tea. "I was thinking about the nursery." "Yeah? Mom and I finished organizing yesterday. You should come see it tonight." Bradley's smile flickered, just slightly, just enough. "Tonight might be tough. I've got that thing with the Davidson account." The Davidson account. Right. "Maybe tomorrow then," Grace said. "Tomorrow for sure." He kissed her goodbye at the door. His lips were warm on her forehead. "Love you," he said. "Love you too." The words meant nothing anymore, just sounds she made to maintain the illusion. Grace watched him drive away. Then she called Vivian. "How are you holding up?" Vivian asked. "I'm fine, 3 more days. The papers are ready. Everything's in order. When he gets home Saturday night, he'll find them on his pillow." Grace closed her eyes. Imagine Bradley walking into their empty bedroom, picking up the divorce papers, reading his own name. "What about the ring?" she asked. That is your call. Some women keep them, some sell them, some leave them behind. Grace looked at her left hand. The diamond caught the morning light. I'll leave it, she said. I don't want anything that reminds me of him. Okay. What about the new place? Everything set? Ready and waiting. Mom's already moved most of my boxes over. Good. Grace, I need to tell you something. The tone of Vivian's voice changed, grew serious. What is it? I did some digging on Bradley, professional digging. There's a pattern here. Grace's stomach tightened. What kind of pattern? 3 relationships before you all ended badly. One ex-girlfriend filed a restraining order during college. Another ex-fiancée lost her job after Bradley told her employer she was mentally unstable. The kitchen seemed to shrink around Grace. He's done this before, she said. Exactly. You're not his first target. You're just the first one who figured it out before he could destroy you. Grace thought about the email to Peggy. Custody leverage. Establish that she's unstable. The playbook was already written. He had used it before. Thank you for telling me, she said. Knowledge is power. And Grace, you're going to be okay. Better than okay. After the call, Grace sat with the information. 3 women before her, 3 women who believed his lies. 3 women he hurt when they became inconvenient. The anger was different now. Colder, more focused. She wasn't just leaving a cheating husband. She was escaping a predator. Day 10. The gala preparations were everywhere. Caterers called about dietary restrictions. The event coordinator confirmed the seating chart. Bradley's assistant sent his tuxedo to be pressed. Grace played her part, the supportive wife who wouldn't be attending because of her condition. Are you sure you don't want to come? Bradley asked that night. They were eating dinner together, a rare occurrence lately. 8 months pregnant at a black tie event? Grace laughed. I can barely stay awake past 9. Bradley reached across the table and took her hand. I appreciate you being so understanding. I know these work things are boring. These work things, where he paraded his mistress in front of colleagues who all knew the truth. It's fine, Grace said. Really? You're amazing, you know that? She wanted to scream, to flip the table, to throw every lie back in his face. Instead, she smiled. I try. That night, Grace lay awake beside him. The darkness pressed down on her chest. 2 more days. 2 more days of this man's hands on her belly, his lips on her skin, his voice saying words that meant nothing. She thought about all the wives who stayed, who believed the apologies, who accepted the explanations. That almost was her. If she hadn't found the receipt, if she hadn't checked his phone, she would have been blindsided after the baby was born, accused of instability, fighting for custody of her own child. The thought made her sick, but it also made her strong, because Grace wasn't just leaving, she was taking back control. Day 11, 1 day before the gala, 1 day before freedom. Grace spent the afternoon in the nursery, not packing anymore, just sitting. The room was almost empty now, the crib disassembled, the decorations boxed. Only the glider remained. She rocked slowly in the chair. The afternoon sun warmed her face. The baby was active today, rolling and kicking and hiccuping. Almost time, Grace whispered. 1 more night, then we're gone. She thought about the new apartment, a 2-bedroom in a neighborhood Bradley would never think to look. Smaller than this house, less impressive, but it would be hers, truly hers. No lies in the walls, no betrayal in the foundation. Grace placed her hands on her belly. She could feel the baby's back, a small curve against her palm. I'm going to tell you a story someday, she said, about a woman who woke up just in time, who escaped before the trap closed, who built a beautiful life from the ruins. The baby kicked in response. That's you and me, little one. We're the story, and it's going to be a good one. That evening, Bradley came home with flowers, yellow roses, her favorite. What's this for? Grace asked, taking the bouquet. Do I need a reason to bring my wife flowers? Guilt. The answer was always guilt. Thank you, she said. They're beautiful. She put them in water. They would be dead by the time he found the divorce papers. The final night, Grace lay awake in the darkness. Bradley slept beside her, oblivious. Tomorrow he would go to his gala, wear his expensive tuxedo, dance with his mistress while his colleagues watched, and Grace would disappear. She thought about the woman who had walked down the aisle 3 years ago, so full of hope, so certain she had found her forever. That woman was already halfway gone. By tomorrow she would be a memory, but something new was growing in her place, something stronger. Grace didn't know exactly who she would become, but she knew this. Whoever that woman was, she would be honest. She would be brave. She would never let anyone make her feel small again. The baby kicked one final time, then went still. Grace closed her eyes. Tomorrow, everything would change. Saturday arrived like any other day. Morning light through the curtains, Bradley humming in the shower, the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. But Grace felt the difference in her bones. She lay in bed and listened to the sounds of her marriage ending, the water turning off, the bathroom door opening, her husband's footsteps crossing to the closet. "You're awake," Bradley said. He was wrapped in a towel, water still beating on his shoulders. "Just watching you get ready." He smiled, that charming smile she used to trust. "The gala starts at 6. I'll probably be home around midnight. Maybe later." Later, of course. "That's fine," Grace said. "I'm just going to rest. Maybe watch a movie with Mom." "Your mother's still here?" "She's helping with the nursery. You know how she is." Bradley nodded. He was already distracted, already thinking about the evening ahead. Grace watched him dress, the crisp white shirt, the perfectly tailored pants, the tuxedo jacket that cost more than her first car. He looked handsome. She had always thought so, but handsome didn't mean honest. Charm didn't mean character. "How do I look?" Bradley asked, adjusting his bow tie in the mirror. "Perfect." The word tasted bitter, but her voice was steady. He crossed the room and kissed her forehead. His cologne filled her senses, the same cologne he would be wearing when he danced with Danny. "Love you, babe. Take care of our little guy." "I will." Bradley left at 5:45. Grace stood at the window and watched his car pull away. The Mercedes disappeared around the corner. She did not cry. She did not scream. She did not fall apart. Instead, she picked up her phone and sent a single text. "It's time." Eleanor arrived first, then Vivian, then the moving truck parked 3 blocks away. The evening sun painted the house in gold. Grace stood in the foyer and looked around. "Ready?" Eleanor asked. Grace nodded. "Let's go." They worked efficiently. Grace had spent weeks planning this. Every item tagged with colored stickers. Green for hers, red for his, yellow for shared. The movers carried boxes to the truck. Eleanor directed traffic. Vivian documented everything for the legal record. Grace moved through the house like a surgeon. Precise, methodical, no room for emotion. The living room emptied first. Her grandmother's quilt, the art she had chosen, the books she had collected since college. Then the kitchen, her copper pots, her grandmother's china, the stand mixer she used every Christmas morning, the dining room, the crystal glasses from her mother, the table runner she made in the craft phase of her 20s. Each item carried a memory. Each memory now freed from these walls. The nursery took longest. Grace stood in the doorway, hand on her belly. The room was almost bare. Just the glider remained, waiting to be loaded. "We'll make a new room," Eleanor said softly. "A better one, just for you and this little one." Grace nodded. Her throat was too tight for words. They carried the glider down the stairs together. The movers loaded it into the truck. The house was half empty now. Bradley's things remained. His golf clubs, his vinyl collection, his expensive suits. Grace walked through one final time. The living room where they watched movies on Sunday nights. The kitchen where he told her he wanted a big family. The bedroom where they made love after their wedding. All of it was ending. Right here. Right now. She climbed the stairs to their bedroom. The room she would never sleep in again. The divorce papers sat in her bag. She had carried them for 3 days, waiting for this moment. Grace placed them on Bradley's pillow. The document was thick. Vivian had been thorough. Then she removed her wedding ring. The diamond caught the last of the evening light. A small rainbow danced across the wall. She set the ring on top of the papers. It looked so small there. 3 years of her life reduced to a circle of metal and stone. Grace stood over the bed, the sheets she had chosen, the pillows she fluffed each morning. The comforter she washed with lavender detergent. Goodbye, she whispered. She walked downstairs without looking back. Eleanor was waiting by the door. The house was empty, except for Bradley's things. Everything's loaded, her mother said. We just need you. Grace nodded. She looked around the foyer one last time. The entryway where Bradley had carried her over the threshold. The hook where she hung her keys. The mirror where she checked her reflection before their dates. She opened the front door. The evening air was warm. Somewhere down the street, a neighbor's sprinkler hissed. Grace stepped outside. Her mother followed. She turned back and looked at the house. Her house. The place she had made into a home. Then she closed the door, locked it with her key, and slipped the key through the mail slot. It clattered against the floor inside. Metal on wood. The sound of a marriage ending. Grace walked to her mother's car. She climbed into the passenger seat. The baby shifted inside her, settling into a new position. You okay? Eleanor asked. I will be. They pulled away from the curb. The house grew smaller in the mirror. Smaller and smaller until it disappeared. Grace faced forward, toward whatever came next. The drive to the new apartment took 20 minutes. They crossed into a different neighborhood. Smaller houses, older trees, a community Bradley would never think to search. Eleanor parked outside a brick building, 3 stories. Nothing fancy, but solid, safe. This is it, her mother said. Grace looked up at the building. Somewhere on the second floor, apartment number 7 waited for her. It's perfect, she said. They unloaded boxes until 10:30. Vivian had to leave at 9. A babysitter deadline. She hugged Grace tight before going. You did it, Vivian whispered. The hard part is over. Grace wasn't sure that was true, but she held on anyway. By 11, the apartment had taken shape, not unpacked, not organized, but present, her things in her space. Eleanor made tea in the tiny kitchen. They sat on the couch Grace had bought secondhand online. He'll be home soon, Eleanor said. Grace checked her phone. No messages. Bradley was still at the gala, still dancing with Danny, still thinking his wife was home watching movies. I know, she said. They sat together in the quiet. The apartment creaked around them. New sounds, new shadows. The baby was still, resting after the long day. How do you feel? Eleanor asked. Grace thought about it, really thought. Empty, she said, but not in a bad way, like I've made room for something new. Eleanor squeezed her hand. That's exactly right. At midnight, Grace's phone buzzed. A text from Bradley. Just got home. Where are you? She stared at the words. He was standing in their empty house right now, looking at bare walls and missing furniture. Another text. Grace? What the hell is going on? Then another. Where are my things? And another. Call me right now. Grace turned off her phone. He found the papers, she said. Eleanor nodded. Good. They sat in silence for another hour. Grace didn't turn her phone back on. Whatever Bradley was feeling right now, whatever fury or confusion or desperation, she didn't need to see it. That chapter was over. At 1 in the morning, Eleanor went to the guest room. Grace stayed on the couch. She pulled a blanket around herself. The apartment was dark except for streetlight through the window. The baby kicked. Once, twice, then settled. We did it, Grace whispered. We really did it. She closed her eyes. Sleep came slowly. But when it arrived, she didn't dream of Bradley. She dreamed of open doors, wide horizons, a future she couldn't see yet, but somehow knew was there. Bradley's texts filled her voicemail over the next 3 days. The first night was confusion. What happened? Where are you? Is this some kind of joke? The second night was anger. How dare you? After everything I've done, you ungrateful woman. The third night was bargaining. Let's talk. Whatever this is, we can work it out. Think about the baby. Grace listened to each message once. Then she deleted them. Vivian called on day 2. He contacted my office, she said, demanded to know where you are. What did you tell him? Nothing. Attorney-client privilege. Plus he was rude to my assistant, so now I really enjoy saying no. Despite everything, Grace smiled. Has he figured out that you're my lawyer? He's figured out enough. I got a very aggressive email from his attorney this morning. A guy named Peterson. All bluster, no substance. What's Bradley claiming? Abandonment, mental instability, the usual playbook. Vivian paused. But Grace, here's the thing. His claims don't hold water. You didn't abandon the marriage. You escaped documented abuse and infidelity. And mental instability? The only evidence he has is that you left him, which isn't exactly a sign of poor judgment. Grace sat on her second-hand couch. The afternoon sun warmed her face. What happens next? He'll respond to the divorce petition. There will be negotiations, maybe mediation, definitely some posturing from his side. And the baby? Custody won't be decided until after birth. But Grace, you have a very strong position. The documentation you gathered, the emails showing premeditation, the pattern of behavior from previous relationships. Any family court judge will see exactly who Bradley is. That evening, Grace unpacked the nursery boxes. The new room was smaller than the one she left behind, but the light was good, soft and warm from a window facing east. She assembled the crib herself, the same crib from the other house, now standing in a new place. A fresh start for old pieces. The baby was active tonight, rolling and kicking like there was somewhere to be. Soon, Grace said, rubbing her belly. Just a few more weeks, then I get to meet you. She hung the mobile of silver stars. They caught the light and scattered tiny rainbows across the walls. Better, she thought, already better. On day 4, Bradley escalated. Grace received a letter from his attorney. Not Vivian's office, her home address. Someone had found the apartment. She opened the envelope with shaking hands. The letter accused her of theft, of fraud, of abandonment of the marital home. It demanded the return of property and full disclosure of her whereabouts. But that wasn't the worst part. Attached to the letter was a motion for emergency custody. Bradley was petitioning the court to grant him guardianship of the unborn child. The grounds: mental instability, paranoid behavior, flight from a stable home environment. Grace read the words 3 times. He's trying to take my baby. She called Vivian immediately. I just got it too, Vivian said. Grace, listen to me. This is a scare tactic, nothing more. He's claiming I'm mentally unstable. And we have documentation proving he planned to make exactly that claim months ago. His own words in his own email. Any judge will see through this. But what if they don't? They will, I promise you they will. Grace sat on the bathroom floor after the call. The tiles were cold against her legs. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. She wrapped her arms around her belly and tried to breathe. This was what he wanted, to scare her, to make her doubt herself, to drive her back into his control. It was working. The tears came then. Finally, after weeks of holding everything together, she cried for the woman she had been, the marriage she had lost, the future she had imagined. She cried for the baby inside her. Who deserves so much better than this chaos? She cried until there was nothing left. Then she dried her eyes, washed her face, looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back was tired, red-eyed, 8 months pregnant, but she was still standing. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She sat by the window in her bedroom. The street below was empty. 3 in the morning. The baby was quiet now, finally resting. Grace pulled out her phone. She had kept it off for days, but now she needed to hear a voice. She called Eleanor. Her mother answered on the first ring. Grace, what's wrong? I don't know if I can do this, Mom. A long pause. What do you need? I need to know it's going to be okay. I need someone to tell me I'm not crazy. I need... Her voice broke. I need to not feel so alone. You're not alone. I'm coming over right now. Mom, it's 3 in the morning. I don't care. I'll be there in 20 minutes. True to her word, Eleanor arrived at 3:22. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside Grace on the couch and held her hand. They stayed like that until the sun came up. He's trying to take my baby, Grace finally said. He's trying, Eleanor agreed, but he won't succeed. How do you know? Because you have truth on your side, evidence, good people fighting for you, and most importantly, Eleanor turned to face her daughter. You have yourself, the woman who saw through his lies, the woman who planned her escape, the woman who walked out of that house with her head held high. Grace wiped her eyes. I don't feel strong. Strength doesn't mean not feeling. It means feeling everything and still getting up the next morning. The baby kicked, hard, right against Grace's ribs. See, Eleanor said, even that little one is cheering you on. Grace laughed, a small sound, but real. I'm scared, she admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Fear keeps you ready. Eleanor squeezed her hand. But don't let it paralyze you. Don't let him win that way. What if the judge believes him? Then we appeal. Then we fight harder. Then we find another way. Eleanor's voice was firm. But Grace, that's not going to happen. Vivian is one of the best family lawyers in this state. She's seen Bradley's type 100 times. She knows exactly how to handle this. Grace nodded. She wanted to believe it. She needed to. The hearing is in 1 week, she said. Then we have 1 week to prepare, starting right now. Eleanor stood and walked to the kitchen. Sounds of coffee being made drifted through the apartment. Grace stayed on the couch. The morning light was growing stronger. She placed her hands on her belly. The baby shifted, settled. We're going to be okay, she whispered. I don't know how yet, but we're going to be okay. It was the same thing she had said in the nursery of her old house, a lifetime ago, but this time, she almost believed it. The week before the hearing was the longest of Grace's life. Each day brought new attacks. Bradley's lawyer sent letter after letter, accusations of hiding assets, demands for financial disclosure, threats of criminal charges. Vivian handled everything. Ignore the noise, she said. Focus on the hearing. But the noise was hard to ignore. Grace stopped leaving the apartment. The outside world felt dangerous, like Bradley might be around every corner. She ate when Eleanor reminded her, slept when her body forced her, moved through the hours like a ghost. The baby was the only thing that felt real. At night, Grace sat in the nursery, the room she had created for her child, the only space that was truly hers. She talked to the baby for hours, told stories about her own childhood, described the life they would build together. Your grandmother taught me to make pie, she said one night. Apple, with a lattice crust. It takes forever, but it's worth it. The baby kicked in response. I'll teach you too, when you're old enough. We'll make it together. These moments were the only peace she could find. 3 days before the hearing, everything fell apart. Grace woke at 2 a.m. to cramping. Not labor, doctor. Calloway had described what that would feel like. This was different. A tightening across her belly, a pressure that wouldn't release. She called the doctor's emergency line. Stress can cause false contractions, Dr. Calloway said. You need to rest, hydrate, try to stay calm. Stay calm, as if that were possible. Grace hung up the phone and walked to the window. The street was empty. The night was silent. The whole world asleep except for her. She thought about Bradley in their old house, sleeping in their old bed, surrounded by his remaining things. Did he feel guilty? Did he lie awake wondering how it had come to this? Probably not. Men like Bradley never questioned themselves. They just found someone else to blame. The cramping eased. The baby settled. Grace stayed at the window. What if she couldn't do this? What if she wasn't strong enough? The thought surfaced like a dark wave, pulling her under. She had spent her whole life being strong, being capable, being the one who held things together. But this was different. This was facing a man who wanted to destroy her, a legal system that might not protect her, a future that was completely uncertain. What if she failed? What if her baby ended up with Bradley? The thought made her physically sick. Grace sank to the floor beneath the window. The carpet was rough against her legs. The darkness pressed in from every side. She thought about her father, the man who left when she was 7, who chose a new family over his first one. She had sworn she would never be like him, that she would fight for her children no matter what. But fighting took energy. It took hope. And right now, both were running out. The tears came silently. No sobs, just a steady flow she couldn't stop. She sat there for a long time, minutes or hours, she couldn't tell. Eventually, the sky began to lighten, dawn creeping through the window. Grace wiped her face, her body ached from sitting on the floor. She thought about getting up, making coffee, starting another day of waiting and worrying, but she couldn't move. The baby kicked, a gentle flutter, like a whisper. I know, Grace said. I know I need to get up. Another kick, stronger this time. Just give me a minute. She closed her eyes. The morning light warmed her face. And then, without planning to, she started to talk. I'm scared, she said out loud. I'm scared that I'm not enough, that I can't protect you, that I'm going to fail. The words hung in the empty room. But here's the thing. Grace opened her eyes. Fear doesn't mean I can't try. It just means I have to try anyway. She placed her hands on her belly, the baby pressed back. I chose you, Grace whispered. The moment I knew you existed, I chose you, and that choice doesn't go away because things are hard. The cramping was completely gone now, her body relaxing, her heart steadying. So here's what we're going to do, she continued. We're going to get through the next 3 days. We're going to walk into that courtroom, and we're going to show everyone exactly what we're made of. The baby kicked again, twice in quick succession. Grace laughed. A small sound, but genuine. I'll take that as agreement. She pushed herself up from the floor. Her legs were stiff, but they held her. The apartment was quiet around her, morning light filling every corner. Grace walked to the bathroom, splashed water on her face, looked in the mirror. The woman staring back was exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, hair tangled from a night on the floor. But her eyes were clear, determined. 3 more days, she told her reflection. You can do 3 more days. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and went to make breakfast. The morning of the hearing arrived with unseasonable warmth. Grace dressed carefully, a navy blue dress that still fit over her belly, simple jewelry, comfortable shoes. Eleanor was already waiting in the living room. Vivian had offered to drive them. Ready? Her mother asked. As I'll ever be. The drive to the courthouse took 30 minutes. Grace spent it watching the city pass by. Ordinary people living ordinary lives. No idea what was about to happen in that courtroom. Vivian reviewed the strategy one final time. Let me do the talking. Answer only what's asked. Stay calm no matter what he says. What if he lies? He will lie, and I'll be ready. Vivian caught her eye in the rearview mirror. Trust the process, Grace. You've done everything right. The courthouse was an old building, stone columns and worn steps, justice carved above the entrance. Grace climbed the steps slowly, her belly leading the way, her mother at her side. Inside, the hallways echoed with footsteps and hushed conversations. They reached the courtroom at 8:45. 15 minutes early, Bradley was already there. He stood outside the doors with his attorney, a tall man in an expensive suit. Bradley himself looked polished as ever. Dark suit, red tie, that confident stance Grace knew so well. He saw her and smiled, actually smiled. Grace, he said, you look well. She said nothing, just walked past him into the courtroom. The room was smaller than she expected, wood panels and fluorescent lights. A bench at the front where the judge would sit. Grace took her place at the table on the left. Vivian beside her, Eleanor in the gallery behind. Bradley entered a moment later. His attorney arranged papers with practiced efficiency. The wait was the hardest part. 20 minutes of silence. Grace focusing on her breathing. In and out, in and out. Then the bailiff stood. All rise. The Honorable Patricia Reyes presiding. The judge entered. A woman in her 60s, silver hair pulled back, sharp eyes behind reading glasses. She sat and gestured for everyone to do the same. This is a hearing regarding the emergency custody motion filed by Bradley Mitchell against Grace Mitchell, Judge Reyes said. I've reviewed the filings from both parties. We'll begin with the petitioner. Bradley's attorney rose. Peterson, Vivian had warned her about him. He laid out his case with practiced calm. The defendant had abandoned the marital home, taken property without consent, fled to an undisclosed location, all signs of mental instability. Your Honor, my client is simply concerned for the well-being of his unborn child. Mrs. Mitchell's erratic behavior raises serious questions about her fitness as a mother. Grace's jaw tightened. Erratic. For leaving a cheating husband. Judge Reyes nodded. In the response? Vivian stood. Your Honor, what opposing counsel describes as erratic behavior was actually a carefully planned exit from a marriage marked by infidelity, deception, and premeditated manipulation. She picked up a folder. I submit Exhibit A. Email correspondence between the petitioner and his mother, dating back 2 months before the respondent left. In these emails, Mr. Mitchell explicitly discusses how to gain custody leverage by establishing that his wife is unstable or unfit. Judge Reyes took the folder. Her eyebrows rose as she read. He planned this, Vivian continued, months before my client discovered his affair. He was already calculating how to take her child while still living under the same roof, sleeping in the same bed, telling her he loved her. Peterson objected. Your Honor, private communications are being taken out of context. Then please provide the context, counselor, because what I'm reading is quite clear. Peterson hesitated. Bradley's confident expression flickered. Vivian pressed on. I also submit Exhibit B, documentation of Mr. Mitchell's pattern of behavior with previous partners. She laid out the evidence. The restraining order from college. The ex-fiancée who lost her job. The trail of women Bradley had targeted and discarded. My client is not an erratic woman having a breakdown, Vivian said. She is the latest victim of a serial manipulator, and she had the strength and intelligence to escape before he could destroy her. Judge Reyes was silent for a long moment. She reviewed the documents. Then she looked at Bradley. Mr. Mitchell, do you deny the affair? Peterson started to speak. The judge held up her hand. I'm asking your client. Bradley shifted in his seat. Your Honor, my marriage was complicated, but whatever personal issues Grace and I were having, that doesn't change my fitness as a father. The question was whether you deny the affair. A pause. No, Your Honor, I do not deny it. The admission hung in the air. And these emails to your mother? Planning custody strategy before your wife knew anything was wrong? I was just preparing for possibilities. Judge Reyes removed her glasses. Her expression was cold. Mr. Mitchell, in 23 years on this bench, I have seen many custody disputes. I have seen genuine concerns about parental fitness. This is not that. She set down the documents. What I see here is a man who was caught in his own trap. A man who planned to manipulate the system against his pregnant wife. A man whose ego cannot accept that she outsmarted him. Bradley's face went pale. The emergency custody motion is denied, Judge Reyes said. Furthermore, I am granting temporary sole custody to Mrs. Mitchell, effective immediately. Grace's breath caught. Mr. Mitchell will have no contact with the respondent except through counsel. He is to remain at least 500 feet from her residence. Peterson rose. Your Honor, sit down, counselor. I'm not finished. The room went silent. Mr. Mitchell, Judge Reyes leaned forward. Your wife did not abandon this marriage. She escaped it. I suggest you reflect on the difference. She gathered her papers. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. Grace sat frozen in her seat, the words echoing in her mind. Temporary sole custody. 500 feet. Vivian squeezed her arm. We won. Behind her, Eleanor made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Grace turned to look at Bradley. He was staring at the table, his attorney whispering urgently. His confidence is shattered. She felt nothing. No triumph, no vindication, just relief so profound it made her dizzy. They filed out of the courtroom. Grace walked slowly, one hand supporting her belly. In the hallway, an unexpected voice stopped her. Mrs. Mitchell, she turned. Richard Mitchell, Bradley's father, stood a few feet away. He was older than she remembered, lines deeper around his eyes, his suit perfectly pressed but somehow deflated. Mr. Mitchell, Grace said carefully. I didn't know. His voice was quiet. About the emails, about his plans. I should have paid more attention. Grace said nothing. I'm sorry, Richard continued, for what he put you through, for what my wife apparently knew and helped hide. It was the last thing that she expected, an apology, from Bradley's own father. Thank you, she said finally. He nodded, then he walked away. Eleanor appeared at her side. What did he want? To apologize. Eleanor watched Richard disappear around a corner. At least someone in that family has some decency. They stepped outside into the warm morning sun. Grace tilted her face toward the sky. The light was brilliant after the fluorescent gloom of the courtroom. It was over. Not completely. There would be more hearings, more negotiations. the divorce itself still to finalize. But the immediate threat was gone. Her baby was safe. Grace placed her hands on her belly. "We did it," she whispered. "We really did it." The baby kicked in response, strong and certain. Like even in the womb, this child already knew how to fight. The first contraction came at 2:17 in the morning. Grace woke from a dream she couldn't remember. Something about water, about swimming toward a light she couldn't quite reach. Then the pain hit. It started low in her back, a tightening that wrapped around her belly like a fist, different from the false contractions she had felt before. This was deeper, more insistent, more real. She lay very still in the darkness, waiting. The contraction released. Grace exhaled slowly. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe her body was playing tricks again. But 7 minutes later, another one came. This time there was no doubt. Grace reached for her phone on the nightstand. The screen glowed in the darkness. She called Eleanor first. Her mother answered on the second ring. No sleep in her voice, like she had been waiting. "It's time," Grace said. "I'm on my way." The call to Dr. Calloway came next. "How far apart are the contractions?" the doctor asked. 7 minutes, maybe 8. "Any water breaking?" "Not yet." "Meet me at the hospital. Take your time getting there. First babies usually take a while." Grace ended the call and sat up slowly. The apartment was quiet around her. The streetlight outside cast familiar shadows on the wall. She had imagined this moment so many times. In the old house, she had pictured Bradley beside her, holding her hand, driving her to the hospital, being there when their child entered the world. That fantasy was gone now, but she wasn't alone. Grace stood and walked to the bathroom. Another contraction came as she reached the door. She gripped the frame and breathed through it. In, out, in, out. The pain released. She continued to the mirror. The woman looking back was pale, dark circles under her eyes, hair tangled from sleep. But her eyes were clear, determined. "Okay, baby," she said softly, placing her hands on her belly. "Let's do this." She had packed her hospital bag weeks ago. It sat by the front door waiting. Inside were the practical things: comfortable clothes, toiletries, the outfit she had chosen to bring her daughter home in. But there were other things too. A photo of her grandmother who had died before Grace could tell her about the pregnancy. A small blanket Eleanor had crocheted during those long nights of planning the escape. A journal where Grace had written letters to her unborn child throughout the pregnancy. These were the things that mattered, the connections that would carry her through. Eleanor arrived at 3:15. She let herself in with the key Grace had given her. "How are you doing?" she asked, setting down her own bag. "Contractions are 6 minutes apart now. Getting stronger." "Then we should go." The drive to the hospital took 20 minutes. The streets were empty at this hour, traffic lights blinking yellow in the darkness. Grace sat in the passenger seat and watched the city pass by, closed shops and dark windows. A world asleep while her body did its work. Another contraction came. She gripped the door handle and focused on breathing. "Almost there," Eleanor said. The hospital appeared ahead. Bright lights against the dark sky, a place where lives began and ended every day. They parked in the emergency lot and made their way inside. The maternity ward was on the 4th floor. A nurse named Patricia met them at the elevator. "Grace Mitchell?" she asked, checking her clipboard. "That's me." "Dr. Calloway is on her way. Let's get you settled." The labor room was small but private, a bed in the center, monitors along one wall, a window that looked out over the parking lot. Grace changed into the hospital gown and climbed onto the bed. The sheets were stiff and cold. Patricia attached monitors to her belly. The baby's heartbeat filled the room, steady and strong. 142 beats per minute, Patricia said. "Perfect." Dr. Calloway arrived at 4:30. She checked Grace's progress and smiled. "You're at 4 centimeters, moving along nicely, but we have a ways to go yet." "How long?" "Hard to say. First babies are unpredictable. Could be 6 hours, could be 12, could be more." It was more. The morning passed in waves of pain and rest, each contraction stronger than the last, each break shorter than the one before. Eleanor stayed by her side, holding her hand, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, speaking words of encouragement that Grace barely heard. By noon, she was at 6 centimeters. By 3 in the afternoon, 7. The pain had become everything. There was no room for thought, no room for fear, just the relentless work of bringing her child into the world. Vivian stopped by during her lunch break. She stood at the foot of the bed, looking slightly uncomfortable. "You're doing amazing," she said. "I'll be back tonight." Grace nodded. Speaking took too much energy. The afternoon stretched into evening. The light through the window shifted from gold to orange to purple. At 6 o'clock, Grace's water broke. The sensation was strange, a release of pressure she hadn't known she was carrying. "Good," Calloway said. "Things should move faster now." She was right. The contractions came harder, closer together. Grace lost track of time, lost track of everything except the rhythm of pain and release. At 8 o'clock, Dr. Calloway checked her again. 10 centimeters, you're ready to push." Grace had read about this moment, had watched videos, had tried to prepare herself. Nothing prepared her for the reality. Pushing was the hardest physical work she had ever done. Every muscle in her body engaged. Every breath focused on this single purpose. "I can see the head," Dr. Calloway said. "You're almost there." Grace pushed again and again and again. The pressure built to an impossible peak, and then release. A cry filled the room, high and fierce. The sound of new life announcing itself to the world. "It's a girl," Dr. Calloway said. Grace knew that already. She had always known. The doctor placed the baby on Grace's chest, a tiny, wrinkled human, red-faced and screaming and absolutely perfect. Grace looked down at her daughter for the first time. The baby's eyes were closed, her fists clenched, her mouth open in protest at this cold, bright world she had entered. But she was here. She was alive. She was real. "Hello," Grace whispered. "Hello, baby girl." The crying softened. The baby's eyes opened, dark and unfocused, but somehow finding Grace's face. "Josephine Eleanor," Grace said. "Josie, I've been waiting so long to meet you." Eleanor was crying. Grace could hear her somewhere behind the monitors. The nurses bustled around, doing whatever nurses do after a birth. But Grace saw only her daughter, this small person she had carried for 9 months, who had kicked inside her during the darkest nights, who had been with her through the discovery and the planning and the escape and the court battles. "We made it," Grace whispered. "Both of us. We made it through." The first night in the hospital was the longest of Grace's life. Not because of pain. The physical recovery was manageable. Dr. Calloway had been careful. The delivery had gone smoothly. No, the length came from something else. The constant waking to feed Josie, every 2 hours like clockwork. The baby's cries cutting through whatever fragment of sleep Grace had managed to find. But Grace didn't mind. She sat in the hospital bed, her daughter cradled against her chest, and watched the night pass outside the window. At 3 in the morning, the city was quiet, just the occasional car on the street below, the distant wail of an ambulance, the hum of the hospital machinery. Josie nursed contentedly, her tiny hand pressed against Grace's skin. "Your grandmother is sleeping in the chair over there," Grace said softly. "She's exhausted. She's been taking care of me for months." The baby made a small sound, not quite a coo, just an acknowledgement. "And your Aunt Vivian will be back tomorrow. She's the one who helped us get free. You'll like her. She's fierce." Grace stroked her daughter's cheek. So soft, so impossibly soft. "I'm going to tell you about your father someday. When you're old enough to understand, I'll tell you the truth, but I won't make you hate him. That's not my choice to make." Josie's eyes drifted closed. The nursing slowed. "But here's what I want you to know right now. You are wanted. You are loved, and you will never, ever doubt your worth." The baby slept. Grace held her for a long time, just watching. The first week at home was a blur. Sleep came in fragments. Meals were whatever Eleanor put in front of her. Showers were brief luxuries snatched between feedings. But slowly a rhythm emerged. Wake with Josie. Feed. Change. Rock her back to sleep. Rest whenever she rested. Eleanor was there for all of it, cooking meals that appeared without being asked for, doing laundry that multiplied impossibly, taking the night shifts when Grace's exhaustion became dangerous. "You're spoiling me," Grace said one afternoon. They were sitting on the couch, Josie asleep between them. That's what mothers are for, Eleanor replied. Besides, I missed this part with you. Your father left when you were 3 months old. I did everything alone after that. Grace looked at her mother, really looked. The lines around her eyes, the gray in her hair, the strength that had carried them both through impossible times. I never thanked you properly, Grace said. For what? For everything. For being there when I found out. For helping me plan. For holding my hand through all of it. Eleanor reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. You would have done the same for me. That's how this works. We hold each other up. On day 10, Josie had her first pediatrician appointment. Dr. Marcus was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice. She examined Josie thoroughly while Grace watched anxiously. Perfect, Dr. Marcus declared. Absolutely perfect. Weight gain is excellent. Reflexes are strong. This is a healthy baby. The words released something in Grace's chest, a worry she hadn't known she was carrying. Her daughter was healthy. Her daughter was thriving. Whatever else happened, she had done this one thing right. That night, after Eleanor went to bed, Grace sat in the nursery alone. The room had come together beautifully, different from the one she had left behind, but better in some ways. The walls were a soft sage green. The crib stood beneath the window. The mobile of silver stars caught the street light and scattered tiny rainbows across the ceiling. Grace rocked slowly in the chair. Josie slept in her arms, warm and heavy. I want to tell you something, Grace whispered. Something I've been thinking about. The baby didn't stir. When I found out about your father, I was terrified. Not just about the betrayal, about you, about bringing you into a broken situation. Grace paused. The words were hard to say even now. For one moment, one terrible moment, I wondered if I could do this alone, if it would be fair to you, to have a mother who was struggling, to grow up without a father who loved you. The memory still hurt, that moment of doubt, that flash of despair. But then you kicked, right when I was at my lowest. Like you were reminding me you were there. Like you were saying, don't give up on us, Mom. Grace wiped her eyes with her free hand. I'm not giving up. I'm never giving up. Whatever comes next, we face it together. That's the deal. Josie shifted in her sleep. A small sigh, then stillness again. Grace held her daughter close and rocked until the first light of dawn crept through the window. The supervised visitation with Bradley began when Josie was 6 weeks old. The meeting took place at a family services center downtown, a neutral location, a social worker present to observe and document. Grace arrived 15 minutes early. She sat in the waiting room with Josie and her carrier, trying to calm her racing heart. She hadn't seen Bradley since the courtroom, hadn't spoken to him, hadn't responded to his messages. Now she would have to watch him hold their daughter. The door opened. Bradley walked in. He looked different, thinner than she remembered. The confidence that used to radiate from him had dimmed. His suit was expensive as always, but it hung on him differently, like it belonged to someone else. Grace, he said. Bradley. He looked down at the carrier, at the baby sleeping inside. She's beautiful, he said. His voice cracked slightly. Grace said nothing. The social worker, a middle-aged woman named Dorothy, led them to a small room with soft couches and bright toys. Mr. Mitchell, you'll have 2 hours with your daughter. Mrs. Mitchell will remain present, as will I. You may hold the baby, feed her if necessary, and interact as you see fit. Any questions? Bradley shook his head. Grace lifted Josie from the carrier and held her out. Bradley took his daughter awkwardly, his hands uncertain, his arms stiff. Josie opened her eyes, looked at this stranger holding her, and began to cry. Not a hungry cry, not a tired cry. The cry of a baby who doesn't recognize the person holding her. Bradley's face fell. What do I do? He asked. Rock her, Grace said, gently. Talk to her. He tried. His movements were jerky, his voice too loud. Josie cried harder. After 10 minutes, Bradley handed her back. She doesn't like me, he said. Grace took her daughter, settled her against her chest. The crying stopped almost immediately. She doesn't know you, Grace said. That's your choice to change. Bradley stayed for another 90 minutes. He watched Grace care for their daughter, asked occasional questions about feeding schedules and sleep patterns, But he didn't reach for Josie again. When the visit ended, he lingered at the door. Grace, he said, I know things got ugly, but maybe we could talk sometime, just us, about what happened. No, just to clear the air. There's nothing to clear, Bradley. You made your choices. Now you live with them. She gathered Josie's things and walked past him without looking back. In the car, she buckled the carrier into the base and sat for a moment before starting the engine. Her hands were shaking. She hadn't realized until now. It's okay, she told herself. It's over. You did it. Josie gurgled from the back seat, a happy sound. Grace laughed, a release of tension she hadn't known she was holding. You're right, she said to her daughter. Nothing to worry about. Let's go home. The next scheduled visit, Bradley didn't show, or the one after that. By Josie's 3-month birthday, he had seen his daughter exactly twice. Grace didn't chase him, didn't send reminders, didn't make it easy. If he wanted to be a father, he knew where to find them. The magazine feature came in the 4th month. A reporter named Sarah Chen was writing a series about single mothers building businesses. Someone had recommended Grace. They met at a coffee shop near Grace's apartment. Josie slept in the carrier while they talked. Tell me about your design philosophy, Sarah said. Grace thought about it, about the spaces she had created, soon the homes she had transformed. I believe homes should tell the truth, she said finally, about who lives there, about what matters to them. A lot of design is about impressing other people. I'm more interested in comfort, in authenticity. Sarah scribbled notes. And how has becoming a mother changed your work? It's clarified my priorities. I used to take on projects just because they were prestigious. Now I choose work that means something, spaces that help people heal, that give them safety when they need it most. The article ran 3 weeks later. The headline read, Single Mom Designer Creates Healing Spaces. New clients flooded in. Within a month, Grace had more work than she could handle alone. She hired an assistant first, a young woman named Maya who had just finished design school, eager and talented and willing to learn. Then a junior designer, a man named Robert who had been laid off from a corporate firm and wanted work that mattered. Then an office, a small space downtown with big windows and good light. The business grew and grew and grew. At Josie's 6-month birthday, Grace landed her biggest project yet. A children's hospital wanted to redesign their oncology wing. The current space was sterile and cold. They wanted something that felt like hope. Grace walked through the ward and saw children in hospital gowns, bald heads and tired eyes, parents sleeping in uncomfortable chairs. She thought about her own child, healthy and thriving at home. The luck of that, the terrible randomness. I can do this, she told the hospital administrator. I can create something that helps these kids fight. She spent 3 months on the project, every detail carefully considered. Soft colors that soothed without being babyish. Murals that told stories of adventure and courage. Furniture that accommodated parents who needed to stay. Lighting that mimicked natural sunshine, even on the darkest days. When it was finished, the head nurse cried, "You understand," she said. "You actually understand what these families need." Grace looked around the space she had created, thought about all the children who would pass through these rooms, the battles they would fight, the love that would surround them. I had a good teacher, she said. Life taught me what really matters. The Women's Shelter Project came next. A nonprofit downtown was expanding. They needed spaces where survivors could feel safe, where they could begin to heal from what they had escaped. Grace took the job for half her usual fee. She interviewed the shelter staff, learned about the women who came through their doors, the patterns of abuse, the long road to recovery. So many of their stories echoed her own. The charming partner who turned controlling, the slow erosion of self-worth, the moment of awakening, the terrifying leap into the unknown. Grace designed bedrooms with locks that worked, common areas filled with light. A children's playroom where kids could just be kids. On the opening day, the shelter director gave a speech. This space was designed by someone who understands, she said. Someone who has walked this path. And she created something beautiful from her own painful experience. Grace stood in the back of the room, Josie on her hip, and tried not to cry. She had turned her worst experience into something that would help others. That felt like the truest kind of victory. One evening, about 9 months after the divorce was finalized, Grace was making dinner. Josie sat in her high chair, smashing banana pieces with obvious delight. The kitchen was warm and bright. Music played softly from the speaker on the counter. Grace was chopping vegetables for soup, carrots and celery and onions, the knife making rhythmic sounds against the cutting board. She caught her reflection in the window above the sink. The woman-looking sack was different from the one who had found that receipt almost 2 years ago. Her hair was longer now, her face less tired. She was wearing an old sweater and yoga pants, no makeup, vegetable bits on her sleeve, and she was smiling, really smiling. Not for anyone else, not because she had to, just because she was happy. Grace set down the knife, stood still for a moment, absorbing the realization. She was happy, despite everything, because of everything. She had built this life from nothing, from the ashes of her broken marriage, from the rubble of her shattered trust. And it was good. It was really, truly good. Josie babbled something from her high chair, a sound that might have been mama. She was starting to form words now, single syllables that meant the world. "Hi, baby," Grace said, turning from the window. "Mama's here." Josie grinned, banana in her hair, joy on her face. Grace crossed the kitchen and lifted her daughter from the chair, held her close, breathed in that baby smell that wouldn't last forever. "We did it," she whispered. "We really did it." The soup could wait. Right now, this was all that mattered. The morning of Josie's first birthday dawned clear and bright. Grace woke early, before the sun was fully up. She lay in bed and listened to the sounds of her apartment coming to life. The refrigerator humming in the kitchen, a bird singing on the fire escape, the soft rustling from the nursery as Josie began to stir. 1 year, 365 days since she had held her newborn daughter for the first time, since she had whispered promises in the hospital darkness. Since she had begun this new chapter of her life, it seemed impossible that so much time had passed. And yet, when she thought about everything that had happened, it seemed impossible that it had only been a year. Grace got up and padded to the nursery. Josie was standing in her crib, holding onto the rails, bouncing with excitement. She had learned to pull herself up 2 weeks ago and hadn't stopped since. "Good morning, birthday girl," Grace said. Josie squealed. Her whole face lit up at the sight of her mother. She said, the words she had mastered, the words she used for everything. Grace lifted her daughter and held her close, breathed in the smell of baby shampoo and sleep. 1 year old today, she said. "Can you believe it? You're 1 whole year old." Josie grabbed a fistful of Grace's hair and tugged. Her answer to everything. The party was scheduled for 3 o'clock. That gave Grace 6 hours to prepare. Eleanor arrived at 10 with grocery bags overflowing. "I got everything on the list," she said, "plus some things that weren't on the list, because I'm your mother and I know best." Grace laughed. "What did you add?" "Another cake. A backup. Just in case." "Just in case what?" Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Have you ever baked a birthday cake before?" "No." "Then trust me, you need a backup." They spent the morning cooking and decorating. Grace had decided to make everything herself. No caterers, no party planners, just her own hands creating something for her daughter. The cake was the biggest challenge. A simple vanilla with buttercream frosting. She had watched 3 videos and read 2 recipes and still wasn't sure she could do it. "The trick is patience," Eleanor said, watching her daughter cream butter and sugar. "Most people rush. You can't rush a good cake." Grace beat the batter until her arm ached, poured it into the pan, and slid it into the oven. Watched through the glass as it slowly began to rise. While the cake baked, they decorated the apartment. Paper streamers in pink and gold. Balloons clustered in corners. A handmade banner that spelled out "Happy Birthday, Josie" in uneven letters. Grace had cut each letter herself. It had taken 3 hours. But the imperfection was part of the point. This party wasn't about impressive perfection. It was about love made visible. The guests began arriving at 3. Vivian came first with her 2 children in tow. Marcus was 5. Lily was 3. They immediately began chasing each other around the apartment. I brought wine, Vivian said, handing over a bottle. For after, when we've survived. That bad? Birthday parties are chaos. Beautiful, exhausting chaos. New friends from the Mommy group arrived next. Women Grace had met in a support circle for single mothers. They had become like sisters over the past year. Sandra, who was raising 3 kids while finishing her nursing degree. Maria, who had escaped a situation similar to Grace's. Denise, whose husband had died in an accident, leaving her with newborn twins. Each of them had found strength in the group, in the shared understanding, in the late-night texts, in the coffee dates, and the constant reminder that they were not alone. Look at this place, Sandra said, admiring the decorations. You did all this yourself? Mom helped. Still, it's beautiful. Clients came too, the ones who had become friends, the hospital administrator who had cried at the oncology wing reveal, the shelter director who had given that speech, a handful of others who had hired Grace for design work and stayed for connection. The apartment filled with voices and laughter. Josie was passed from arms to arms, soaking up the attention. She was a social baby, had been from the start. She smiled at everyone, reached for everyone, made everyone feel special. Just like her mother used to do, Grace thought, before life taught her to be more careful. At 3:45, Charlie arrived. Bradley's sister stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. She held a gift wrapped in pink paper. Her expression was hesitant. Is this okay? She asked. I wasn't sure if I should come. Grace stepped forward and hugged her. You're always welcome. Your family. The good kind. Charlie's eyes glistened. Thank you. I wasn't sure. I'm sure Josie loves her Aunt Charlie. They had built an unlikely friendship over the past year. Charlie had testified at the final custody hearing. She had brought documents from her parents' house. Old emails, old photos, evidence of Bradley's pattern that stretched back to his college days. Her testimony had been devastating. For her brother, for her family relationships, for the fragile peace she had maintained for years. But she had done it anyway. Some things matter more than bloodlines, she had told Grace afterward. Truth matters. Doing the right thing matters. Now Charlie sat on the floor with Josie, letting the baby tug at her earrings and babble nonsense syllables. She's gotten so big, Charlie said. Last time I saw her, she couldn't even sit up. They change fast at this age. Every week something new. She has your eyes, your smile too. Grace watched her daughter with her aunt, 2 people connected by blood and by choice. Thank you for being here, she said. Thank you for letting me. At 4 o'clock, Grace brought out the cake. It was lopsided, definitely lopsided. One side rose higher than the other, giving it a rakish tilt. The frosting was uneven. Some spots thick, others thin. The decorations she had attempted were more abstract than intended. But on top, a single candle burned. Everyone gathered around. Josie sat in her high chair, eyes wide at the flames. Ready? Grace asked. Josie slapped the tray of her high chair, her answer to everything. They sang happy birthday, badly, beautifully, all together. Josie watched with something like wonder, at the faces surrounding her, at the voices raised in celebration, at the candle flickering in front of her. Make a wish for her, Eleanor whispered in Grace's ear. Grace closed her eyes. The wish came easily, the same one she had whispered in the hospital a year ago. Let her know her worth. Let her never settle. Let her always, always choose herself. She opened her eyes and helped Josie blow out the candle. Everyone cheered. Josie screamed with delight, not understanding what had happened, but knowing it was good. Then the cake was cut. And the 1-year-old birthday girl got her first taste. She smashed her slice with both hands, smeared frosting across her face, in her hair, up her arms, giggled with pure, unfiltered joy. The adults laughed. Phones came out to capture the moment. Grace stood back and watched. Her daughter, her friends, her family, her home, all of it built from nothing, from the worst moment of her life, from the discovery that everything she believed was a lie. And yet here she was, surrounded by love, watching her child celebrate being alive. Something shifted in Grace's chest, a loosening, a release. She had done it, really done it, Not just survived, but thrived. The party wound down around 6. Guests departed with hugs and promises to do this again soon. The apartment emptied slowly, leaving behind scattered wrapping paper and half-eaten cake. Vivian was the last to go. "You okay?" she asked at the door. Grace nodded. "Better than okay." "Good. Because I need to tell you something. About Bradley." The name still triggered a reaction. A tightening in her stomach. A quickening of her pulse. "What about him?" Vivian glanced back to make sure Eleanor was occupied with Josie. Danny sold her story. A gossip website paid her for the inside account of the affair. Grace processed this. "When?" "The article goes live tomorrow. I saw an advance copy through a contact. It's not pretty for him." "How not pretty?" "She names names, gives dates, describes the whole thing in detail, including how he told her he was planning to leave you after the baby came, how his mother helped coordinate." Grace leaned against the doorframe. She wasn't sure what she felt. Not triumph exactly, not satisfaction, maybe something like closure. "There's more," Vivian said. "Other women are coming forward. 2 ex-girlfriends who had similar experiences. They're talking to the press." The pattern. Exactly. Everything we documented for the custody hearing is about to become public knowledge. Grace thought about Bradley, about the image he had cultivated so carefully. The charming executive, the dedicated family man, the pillar of his community. All of it about to crumble. "How do you feel about that?" Vivian asked. Grace considered the question. Really considered it. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I thought I would feel something more. Victory, maybe, or vindication." "And you don't?" "I feel nothing, like it's happening to someone else, in a story I used to read but don't anymore." Vivian smiled. "That's healthy, actually. That's you moving on." After Vivian left, Grace helped Eleanor clean up. They worked in comfortable silence, gathering plates and cups, folding the tablecloth, taking down the decorations. Josie had fallen asleep in her pack and play, exhausted from the excitement. Her face was still streaked with the frosting remnants. "Good party," Eleanor said. "The cake was a disaster." "The cake was perfect. Josie loved it." Grace laughed. "She loved eating it. That's not the same as it being good." At this age, that's exactly the same. They finished cleaning and sat on the couch. The apartment was quiet now, the aftermath of celebrations settling into peace. "Can I tell you something?" Grace asked. "Always." "I thought about him today. Bradley. When I was watching Josie with everyone, I thought about the fact that he wasn't here." Eleanor waited. "And I realize I don't miss him. I don't wish he was part of this. I'm not or angry or anything. I just noticed his absence, like noticing a piece of furniture that used to be in a room. And then I moved on." Eleanor reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "That's healing," she said. "Real healing. Not pretending you were never hurt. Just not being hurt anymore." "Is that what it feels like? Healing?" "That's exactly what it feels like." The next few months brought the slow unraveling of Bradley Mitchell. The article was everything Vivian had warned about, and worse. Danny told her story in vivid detail. The secret relationship, the promises Bradley made about leaving his wife. The moment she realized he had been stringing her along, just like he strung along everyone else. But the most damaging parts came from the other women. 2 ex-girlfriends, one from college, one from his 20s, both telling similar stories of charm that turned to control, of manipulation that escalated to cruelty, of accusations of instability when they tried to leave. The pattern Grace had discovered was now public knowledge. Bradley's firm asked him to take a leave of absence. The partners didn't want the publicity, didn't want clients asking uncomfortable questions. Then the leave became permanent. Then other professional doors began to close. Grace heard about it from Charlie, who still maintained some contact with her brother, not out of loyalty to him, but because someone needed to watch, to make sure he didn't spiral into something dangerous. "He's living in Mom and Dad's guest house," Charlie reported, "drinking too much, feeling sorry for himself." "What about your parents?" "Dad's angry, not at Bradley's behavior exactly, at him getting caught, at embarrassing the family name." "And your mother?" Charlie's face tightened. Mom's still insisting you're the villain, that you drove him to it, that none of this would have happened if you had been a better wife. Grace had stopped being surprised by Peggy's delusions. Some people can't see the truth even when it's in front of them, she said. It would require them to admit they were wrong. She sent you a letter, didn't she, asking to see Josie? She did. Mom responded for me. What did she say? That when Peggy is ready to apologize for what she knew and when she knew it, we can discuss visitation. Charlie nodded slowly. That's fair. More than fair, honestly. Has she said anything about apologizing? No, I don't think she ever will. Grace accepted this. Some relationships couldn't be repaired. Some people couldn't change. The best you could do was protect yourself and move forward. The final divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday in March. Grace had been waiting for them, knew they were coming, had prepared herself. But still, holding the documents in her hands, she felt the weight of the moment. 3 years of marriage, a pregnancy, a birth, a legal battle, a complete reconstruction of her life, all of it ending with her signature on a piece of paper. She signed at the kitchen table. Josie played on the floor nearby, stacking blocks and knocking them down. Grace Mitchell became Grace Bennett again. The name she was born with, the name she would carry forward. She put down the pen and looked at her daughter. It's done, she said. Mama's officially free. Josie knocked down her tower and laughed. Grace laughed too. What else could you do? Life was ridiculous and painful and beautiful. Sometimes all at once. She sealed the papers in the envelope, addressed it to the lawyer, set it by the door to mail. Then she got down on the floor and helped Josie rebuild her tower. Some things deserve celebrating. Others just deserved letting go. This was the second kind. Spring turned to summer, summer to fall, fall to winter. Grace's business continued to grow. She opened a second office, hired more designers, took on projects that challenged her and projects that fulfilled her. A community center in her old neighborhood, a rehabilitation facility for recovering addicts, a school library that transformed a forgotten corner into a gateway to imagination. Each project meant something. Each space told a story of hope. The awards started coming. Design magazine features, industry recognition, invitations to speak at conferences. Grace accepted some, declined others. Fame wasn't the goal, impact was. Josie grew alongside the business. She learned to walk, then run, to talk in full sentences, to express opinions and preferences, and the occasional tantrum. She started preschool at 2.5. Grace cried the whole first day. It's 3 hours, Eleanor said gently. She'll be fine. I know, I'm not worried about her. Then what? Grace wiped her eyes. It's just happening so fast. She was a baby 5 minutes ago. Now she's a person with her own life. That's what children do. They become people. Grace picked Josie up at noon. Her daughter ran across the classroom and threw herself into her mother's arms. Mama, I painted a picture. You did? Can I see? Josie showed her a swirl of colors, purple and orange and green, no recognizable shapes. It's beautiful, Grace said. What is it? It's us, Josie said. You and me. Grace held the painting like it was priceless. Because it was. She dated occasionally, a coffee here, a dinner there. Nice men, interesting men, men who seemed genuinely kind, but nothing stuck. She wasn't looking for it to stick. Wasn't ready. Wasn't sure she would ever be. And that was okay. Grace had learned that she didn't need a partner to be complete, didn't need romance to be fulfilled. The love in her life was abundant without it. Maybe someday, maybe never. Either way, she would be fine. On the second anniversary of the day she found that receipt, Grace sat in her office after hours. The building was quiet. Her staff had gone home. Only the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic from the street below. She was working on plans for a new project, a home for a family recovering from loss. They wanted a space that honored their grief while making room for joy. It was the kind of work she loved best, complex and meaningful and deeply personal. But tonight her mind wandered. 2 years. 2 years since her world collapsed. Since she discovered the lies. Since she began planning her escape. 2 years since she transformed from a trusting wife into whatever she was now. What was she now? She thought about it. Really thought. A mother, a business owner, a daughter, a friend, a survivor, a thriver, a woman who had been broken and remade herself stronger, someone who had learned the hardest lessons and emerged with wisdom she never wanted, someone who was finally, genuinely at peace. Grace saved her work and shut down the computer, gathered her bag and coat, turned off the lights. The office was dark except for the city glow through the windows. She paused at the door. "Thank you," she said quietly. To the universe, to herself, to whatever force had guided her through. Then she went home to her daughter. The night before Josie's second birthday, Grace sat in the rocking chair in her daughter's room. Josie was asleep in her toddler bed. The crib was long gone. Everything was changing so fast. The room was different now, too. Josie had opinions about decoration. The walls were covered with her artwork. Stuffed animals crowded every surface. A small bookshelf held the picture books they read together every night. Grace rocked slowly in the familiar chair, the same one from the first apartment, from the nursery she had created while planning her escape. She thought about all the nights she had spent in this chair, nursing a newborn, comforting a teething baby, reading to a curious toddler. This chair had held all of it, every stage, every milestone, every ordinary moment that became extraordinary in memory. Grace looked at her sleeping daughter. Josie's face was relaxed in sleep, her dark hair spread across the pillow, her small hands clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. She looked like Grace. Everyone said so. The same eyes, the same smile, the same stubborn set of the jaw. But she was her own person too, with her own thoughts and feelings and future. A future Grace would help shape but couldn't control. "I'm going to tell you a story someday," Grace whispered, "about how you came into this world, about what was happening while you were growing inside me." The darkness settled around her words. "I'll tell you the truth, all of it, the hard parts and the hopeful parts, because you deserve to know where you come from." Josie shifted in her sleep. A small sound, then stillness. "But here's what I want you to understand, baby girl. The story of how you started is not the story of who you'll become. You get to write your own story, your own ending, your own happy ever after." Grace wiped her eyes. "I almost lost myself trying to be what someone else wanted. I almost forgot what I was worth. Don't ever do that. Don't ever let anyone make you small." She stood from the chair, crossed to the bed, leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead. "You are fierce and loved and capable of anything. Remember that. Even when life gets hard, especially when life gets hard." Josie didn't stir. Grace watched her for another moment. Then she turned and walked to the door. Tomorrow would bring a party, cake and presents and chaos. Another year celebrated. But tonight, this was enough. This quiet moment, this sleeping child, this life she had built from nothing. Grace turned off the nightlight and closed the door softly. The apartment was peaceful around her. Her apartment, her home, her life. She walked to her bedroom, the bed that was hers alone, the space she had created exactly as she wanted it. Tomorrow would be full, but tonight, rest. Grace climbed into bed and pulled the covers up. She thought about the woman who had stood in that bathroom 2 years ago, holding a receipt that changed everything. That woman had been terrified, shattered, uncertain if she could survive what was coming. She had survived. She had more than survived. Grace closed her eyes. She didn't dream of Bradley anymore. Hadn't for a long time. Tonight she dreamed of open doors, of wide horizons, of her daughter running through fields of wildflowers. Dreams of the future, not the past. When morning came, Grace woke with the sun. She lay still for a moment, letting the day arrive gently. Another birthday, another year, another chance to build something beautiful. She got up and went to start the celebration. In the kitchen, she made coffee, set out the ingredients for birthday pancakes, put on music that Josie loved. The apartment filled with warmth and sound and anticipation. Soon Eleanor would arrive, then the friends, then the chaos of celebration. But for now, this moment was hers. Grace stood at the window with her coffee. Watched the city wake up below. She thought about all the lives being lived down there, all the stories unfolding, all the people fighting their own battles, building their own futures. She was one of them now, not special, not remarkable, just a woman doing her best. And somehow, that was everything. The bedroom door opened behind her. "Mama," Josie's sleepy voice called out. "Is it my birthday?" Grace set down her coffee and turned with opened arms. "It is, baby girl. Happy birthday." Josie ran across the apartment and threw herself into her mother's embrace. Grace held her tight. This small person who had changed everything, who had given her a reason to fight when fighting seemed impossible. "I love you, Mama," Josie said. "I love you too, sweet girl. More than anything in the whole world." They stood together in the morning light, mother and daughter, survivor and proof of survival. Whatever came next, they would face it together. That had always been true. That would always be enough. And that's where Grace's story ends. Not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with peace, with a daughter who knows she is loved, with a life built on truth instead of lies. If this story touched your heart, if you found yourself cheering for Grace, if you felt that moment of recognition, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me what part hit you the hardest. Share this with someone who needs to hear that starting over is possible. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Because every week, I bring you stories just like this one. Stories of strength, stories of survival, stories of women who chose themselves. Until next time, take care of your heart. You only get one.